Good afternoon and welcome to the weekly show with Mike Hayes, where we bring you news, commentary, and interviews from around the cannabis industry. Today is Friday, May 29th, 2020, and it's our second episode. I finished writing the script last night as helicopters circled my neighborhood and George Floyd protesters were tear-gassed about 10 blocks away. It's a very upsetting situation, and there's a lot to say about it, but not much of that fits into a satirical cannabis news show format. Fair enough. But here's what I will say. The problems that led to the death of George Floyd and riot police on the streets of Denver are systemic problems. That means that they require large, overarching solutions. The cannabis industry, as always, has an opportunity to step up and be part of those large solutions. When I interviewed Sarah Woodson last week and we talked about equity in cannabis, we weren't just talking about making our industry better. We were talking about making America better through our industry. That is a powerful opportunity, and it is something that you will absolutely hear discussed again and again on this show. The cannabis plant can be powerful, it can be spiritual, it can be medicinal, and it can be just plain old fun. This show aspires to the same standard. With that in mind, let's get to the news. Our top story tonight is the hottest debate in cannabis media. Is cannabis counter-cyclical, meaning an industry that does better when the economy tanks? Wall Street analysts point to alcohol sales increases after 2008 and said cannabis will probably follow similar macroeconomic trends. Meanwhile, my bud tender pointed to common sense and said, yeah, people smoke more when life sucks. Despite this obvious answer, it seems that everyone wants to debate the question of whether it's going to be counter-cyclical. I didn't understand why at first until I started to appreciate how fun it was to say the word counter-cyclical. And then I wanted to say it too, so there you go. But if the economic downturn is coming, CNN is here to warn us with this headline. Smaller joints and less potent buds, recession weed is here. That's right, everybody, update your stoner Bibles because CNN is coining new slang. What we all knew as Reggie weed is now being redubbed recession-y weed. In the future, you may hear a bud tender say something like, you know, the strain's pretty good price, but it's just a little recession-y. Super popular in 2021, though. Now, moving on to our next story, folks, we're looking at the biggest cannabis scandal of the week. I am already getting ripped off by Netflix. That's right, your favorite YouTuber with less than 10 subscribers is getting stepped on by big streaming. Okay, look, I filmed episode 1 last Friday and I released it Saturday afternoon. Within 2 days, Netflix puts this on YouTube.
Which is why tonight, I'm talking about weed.
That clip is from The Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj, a show with a suspiciously similar naming structure to my own. Clearly, Netflix can tell that I'm the leader in the cannabis satirical news show market because they even wanted to imitate my content. What did I interview Sarah Woodson about on Friday? Or the very important topic of equity. And what did Hassan want to talk about on Monday?
Legal marijuana is rigged.
Yeah, I see how it is, Netflix. And look, as copies go, Hassan did a pretty good job. They covered the issue of equity, and they also covered the hilariousness of the MedMen situation.
I am white. I do live in a trailer park with my mom.
Right.
Although, come on, you're gonna go right for MedMen out of the gate? Of course we all know it's a clown show there. There was literally an entire long-form article published about it last week. So sure, MedMen is comic gold, but I was building up to that. Hassan, you're like the kid who torches the entire bowl of greens and then says, I didn't really know, I don't smoke that often.
And yes, I know, I have big narc energy. I don't do drugs.
Okay, fine, we'll let that slide. But it's still not cool to copy me. And I know what you're thinking. Mike, wasn't Hassan Minhaj literally on the actual TV show that you are now clearly ripping off? And to that I say, how dare you? And let's move on to the next news story. Because our last story this week is late-breaking news from MJ Biz Daily. The United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs is preparing for a December vote on cannabis recommendations from the World Health Organization. MJ Biz says this is good news for industry stakeholders. That's right, American cannabis industry, our long national nightmare is over. I'd like to see conservatives in the US government just ignore a large international body like the UN or the WHO. I just don't see how they could do it. And that's it for our cannabis industry news in brief. If you enjoyed it, consider sharing it on social media or sending it to an industry friend. Coming up next, we've got an interview with George Jage, who was kind enough to come on the show after I called his latest business a idea. Let's take a look. George Jage launched a new kind of online conference. Yes, attendees at MJ Unpacked could sit on their couch at home while a look-alike avatar explored a virtual trade show. Now you might be thinking, wow, starting this conference must be one of the absolute best ideas this guy has ever had. Virtual avatar. Well, thanks, George, so much for sitting down and joining us today to update, get your thoughts on the industry.
Fantastic, Mike. I really appreciate being able to be on your show.
Thank you. So I want to start off just my understanding of your background as you started in kind of niche markets for events, trade shows, media. You got into the cannabis industry with MJ Biz. You built that business up with a team there to a pretty large extent. We know you spent a little time at Dope Magazine and managed to get that company maybe into a better place, sold it to High Times Magazine, and now the biggest thing in your world right now is MJ Unpacked, which has been shifting to a virtual-only conference. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're working on?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll probably hire you to ghostwrite my biography someday. You seem to nail all of the key elements there. Thank you. So MJ Unpacked is a virtual 3D summit. What we've created here is really a event that is exclusively for brand and retail executives. We believe that that is a relatively underserved segment of the market. And really, it's the most critical engagement point and kind of subsegment right before we're all collectively reaching the consumer. So there's a lot of shared challenges and opportunities between the brand and the retailers, the brands and the retailers, to really help educate the consumer upstream, create a positive retail experience, and for the brands to have transparency on selling an experience themselves, right? Like they're selling a psychotropic medicine and or recreational use product. So how does that brand communicate to the consumer what their product's going to do and do it consistently?
When did you launch this project? When did you realize that your plans were about to be scattered to the wind? And how did you make the decision that you were going to forge forward in the virtual space?
Yeah, well, so, I got into the cannabis industry, or I found the cannabis industry in 2014. I think it was kind of a full circle moment for me, having the trade show and event experience and business media experience and an extension of the herbal distribution business that I had in high school and college. So it was really kind of collaborating all of those life experiences. But I've had the opportunity to run 3 different media companies in the space. I've been having a conversation with a dear friend of mine, Patrick Ray at Canopy Boulder. Patrick used to be an executive at Natural Products Expo. He truly understands, the event space. And he and I have been talking for a little while. I found myself, wondering if I wanted to stay in the cannabis industry or if I wanted to, pursue other interests. And we started talking about that there is a bigger opportunity here in the business media space to really focus on these brands. And, we are a consumer packaged goods industry. So Patrick decided to recruit me into the Canopy cohort for this winter class. That comes with a decent amount of capital for pre-seed money for me to start the formation of the business, start hiring some of my initial team. I started the business with my wife, who's my business partner, and she used to run World Tea Media with me, so she's very experienced, business media and trade show operator as well. So we went out and raised some money, and Patrick is a tremendous coach when it comes to pitch decks, and he just works you through the ringer and makes you pitch. Fortunately, based on, both my reputation, some people that have invested in my past businesses that have had success, we closed our entire seed round in February. We were only the second company in Canopy Boulder's history that actually closed their seed round before the cohort actually completed. Work was the other one. Tip of my hat to Keegan and his team. So we were kind of in a unique position because we were fully funded, with an 18-month runway, and we hadn't jumped in the pool. So we didn't have to kind of dry off, figure it out. I know a lot of the other trade shows were like, oh, we're not giving people money back and we're going to hold it and we'll figure this out. We're going to reschedule dates. It just left, there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know what to do. I hate to overuse the unprecedented times, statement. Maybe you could play some soft piano music in the background while we say, these are unprecedented times. I mean, these are hard times, but it's really disruptive, and our entire economy has been disruptive. So how do we provide new solutions to the same existing needs in our industry? And that was really where the idea to move forward with a virtual event came about. I've seen this technology for 20 years. It's evolved, not tremendously, but it doesn't typically work well with a consumer packaged goods industry, because you want to be able to see and touch and feel those products, right?
Right.
So we decided to move forward. I think one of my skills and weaknesses is I like to move really fast. So we pushed really hard, and in 5 weeks, completely retooled our business, launched the first virtual trade show for the cannabis industry, and very likely maybe launching the second virtual trade show for the cannabis industry with our next event for the California market at the end of June.
On the topic of events in general, since you run events in other industries, now in cannabis, my question is the cannabis industry particularly attuned to events because we like to socialize and hang out with each other? Or is any industry just as open to events? Or do you look for things in certain industries where you say, okay, this is an industry that would really get along well with events, and over here is an industry where they really don't want to come and network with each other at all? How do you look at that?
Well, my experience has always been in early stage markets. So, it creates an opportunity that people are really, seeking information. They're seeking to be able to build networks. I think, some of the kind of stayed and tired and true industries, concrete, things like that. Like, I mean, it's kind of a boondoggle for people to get together, maybe see some new products, but also just to kind of, reconnect with those people in the industry. But yeah, I think, it's not inherent or exclusive to cannabis. I mean, again, going back to the fact that, we are a social creature, and we, strive to provide, validate ourselves, right? And we do that professionally, not just personally. So we want to go to events. We want to develop ourselves professionally, hear the thought leaders, make new connections, be able to build those connections into business opportunities. So I think that events, period, they drive business. One of the event companies I used to run, most of our exhibitors did about 70 to 80% of their annual business just at our events.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah. I'm curious what you would tell someone if you met someone at a dispensary who maybe they recognized you as someone who's been around the industry for a while, and they said, hey, I'm a bud tender, I've been doing this for a year, but I really want to climb towards this being my career path. You've now been an executive at multiple companies. How can I build my skill set in that direction and really turn this into a career that I can, do for several decades, and it wouldn't be a hard retail life? What kind of advice would you give to people who want to move themselves up in this industry?
Sure. I think, it depends on what they're passionate about. You talk about a bud tender. My advice to them would be the best bud tender in the entire state, right? Like, I mean, when you look at the food and the food and beverage industry, I mean, go to a restaurant, the sommeliers that are working there that truly have a mastery of wines, that are making recommendations and helping customers in a really significant way, probably make a nice 6-figure living. With tips and everything else, and can provide a very nice life for their family. Same thing with a retail store. If you're a manager and you have managerial skills, if you're working at a staff level, go get an online degree, on business management, or just self-teach and hack your education to become a really effective manager, because, that talent pool is going to come from the existing people in the industry.
One more question, very selfishly. Where are we at right now in cannabis media, and does a YouTube show have a chance of taking off?
Yes, absolutely. And listen, I mean, the way we consume media has changed dramatically in the last 30 days, 60 days, the last couple of years. Certainly I think, my son, who's a little, gamer dude and, YouTuber and everything else, and hashtag scholarship. I think that, generationally, more people are looking at YouTube or looking at streaming channels that they can watch content on demand. So, once you start building those subscriptions, and I subscribe to several people's content on YouTube, and when it comes into my inbox, I'm very excited to watch it.
I mentioned to you the other day that there are some pockets of YouTube and new media that are very vibrant. Like Tesla is one of those, right? Tesla has a whole Twitterverse, Tesla has a YouTubeverse, and there are people who spend a lot of their time just consuming Tesla content, some of them who are investors in Tesla, but others who are just fascinated by the company. And I was kind of surprised that cannabis doesn't have that vibrant new media world. We're a startup industry. It's a fascinating business story.
I think it does. I think, it's just, Elon Musk, AKA Tony Stark. I mean, the storytelling behind that brand is phenomenal. And, he didn't just make an electric car that, is kind of awkward to drive around when we're used to this power for so long, like Toyota did. He created sexy cars that have a ton of power. Like, he understood the American psyche that we are born to drive. This has been ingrained for 50 years in our society, right? The same way it's been ingrained that we need to go and drink out of a can or go to a bar and drink, right? So how do we transform those? But you look at companies like Cookies and what they're doing with social media, or brands like Candescent and how they're creating not a product, but their products are built around the emotion or the experience, right? And I think companies, as they start using that storytelling, is really, we're going to see the Teslas of our industry.
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us today and sitting down with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I'm honored, sir. Thank you. Continued success. And don't forget to subscribe below. Mike Hayes.
That's right. Thanks, George. Talk soon.